Sir Mike Ring. He is the CEO of, and if he would come up on the screen, there we are. It's amazing technology. You would think AI could do this, but no, humans still have to do something. Mike Ring, CEO of Old Glory Bank, joins us. Mike, it is so good to see you. Thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
All right. Well, this will be a lot of fun. Now, first, I want to just start. This is your first time on the program. Some of our audience may not know much about you, so give us a kind of a 30,000-foot view of some of your background, a little bit about Old Glory Bank and the things that you are a part of and the work that you're doing.
So thanks for that. I'm the humble servant, the humble leader of Old Glory Bank. We have 80 wonderful employees in America. We have 80,000 accounts across all 50 states, 5,000 business accounts. And we were created as a market response to debanking, which is in the news all the time. I've been out there screaming about debanking since 2022, and everyone told me I was crazy. And then they said it wasn't happening. And then they said, oh, it's happening, but it's the regulators. And I am always out there saying, debanking is real. It's not the regulators. It's not the regulation. It's the weak banks and the weak CEOs who do not love what we love, the kingdom, the country, the flag, and community. So we created a bank to be a market response, and we have the best banking products and services in the country, and it's not even close.
How about that? Well, let's get into this. I mentioned the economic fog, particularly coming out of D.C. Major tariff ruling from SCOTUS, as you know, ruling some of President Trump's tariffs unconstitutional, being that the IEEA, that act did not give him the powers to unilaterally put those tariffs into place. Then we have Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that they could stay tied up in the courts for years, meaning that all the revenue is stuck in litigation until either it gets paid back in refunds to these other businesses, or maybe businesses pass those on to consumers in savings. Secretary Bessent says he doesn't see that as very likely. With that in consideration, from a banking and a business confidence standpoint, how does that prolonged legal uncertainty, what does that do to the real economy, and how does that affect the banking and business sector, in your view, Mike?
Yeah, that's great. So let's break it up in two parts. First, let's talk about the money they collected. And there's estimates between a low of $130 billion over the last 12 months from these new Trump tariffs. Now, listen, there are still Trump tariffs in place from Trump 1. And so those monies are still collected and there's no risk of those. But let's say it's $135 billion that have come in under this last 12 months under the tariffs he put in under, it's IEEPA is how they pronounce it, but it's the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. And then the second issue is how do businesses plan for tariffs going forward, since the ones that were just put in place a year ago, or less than a year ago now, have been declared illegal under IEEPA. So let's take the first one, the easy one, which is the money. Don't anyone spend the money. I think this one is going to be hard. One is it was never coming back to consumers. Even if it went back to the people who paid them, the businesses, they weren't giving them to the consumers. So let's be real about that. So this was never coming to America, back to the Americans. Now, could it come back to the businesses? Could it help them reinvest and do things? This is what I say. If these businesses get this money back, please invest it in America and build in America. The reason why I believe Trump has put tariffs in, not to tax inbound imports, but to force and incentivize businesses to invest in America, because without a middle class, there is no America. And as RC and you talk about, the easiest way for the left to win and us to lose is to take God out of our community and to gut the middle class. So I think the money is going to be hung up in litigation for years, but I think the tariffs going forward, Trump has a plan to destabilize that, and I'm happy to talk about it. And by the way he stabilizes them, I think it will be better longer term.
Let me ask you about that as far as Trump's plan and what you see, because people like me, I'll admit I'm certainly not economically astute, not to your level at all. If I was the CEO I can't even be the CEO of the bank and play Monopoly. You know what I mean? So
I don't believe that, Andrew.
So I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to pretend I can swim in deeper waters than I actually can. For many of us, when I say us, American citizens, we're looking at this. We see tariffs. We interpret them effectively as whether or not businesses absorb it for a period of time, eventually it comes back to us. So then it becomes like a tax. When we see this kind of ruling that happened from SCOTUS, then we say, well, now we've taken all this revenue. Where's the benefit? Where's the stabilization? Where's the America First engine coming from this? What exactly is the thought behind this tariff, particularly this contextual tariff policy? And will we see the benefits? Are we seeing benefits that maybe we don't acknowledge? Help us understand, even from a fourth grade level, what we're dealing with and why it matters here.
This is such a great question, Andrew. Thank you for asking. So I am on the Trump bandwagon for tariffs, not because it's a tax on America. And you're right. Every cost to business, every input cost to business ultimately has to get passed down. Now, as people saw, it was not nearly the price and the inflation impact that we thought in 2025, because businesses did absorb that. But here's the long-term strategy that Trump is trying to solve for, is that, take this simple parameter. In 1954, 89% of men had a job and worked. And you know where they worked? In the economy. They were manufacturing, they were builders, they were plumbers, they were laborers, they did real jobs. Today, that is only 67%. So that means there are 20% less men. Everyone talks about the unemployment rate. I always say, baja the unemployment rate. The real thing that people should be talking about is the labor participation of men. And the reason why I'm not bringing up women here is there's not good testing back in the 50s of what they worked. So I'm going to really focus on men. So today, about 20% less men work than they did in 1954, when we had a robust middle class, when people have said it was some of the heydays, the 50s, 60s, 70s, not so good, but then 80s and 90s. And it was because there were jobs to go. Not everyone can be talent like you all. Not everyone can, be a lawyer and a banker like I am. A lot of people want to have a good job. And where do those good jobs come from? From manufacturing, from labor. So unless we create a middle class job where a family can make $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year, we won't have a middle class. And 70% of our economy is driven by consumer spending. So it goes hand in hand. And this is the long ball that Trump is playing. Do you know how easy it would have been for Trump to do nothing with tariffs and just lowered interest rates, lowered energy prices, and we'd have had 2-3 years of just sailing and great economy? But it's going to be a problem 10 years from now. And because he's at this spot in life and he really sees the future and he's a real business person, he is planning for the future. And so unless we build this middle class, our kids will not have the opportunities we have. And it's hard and it's complicated, and people don't want to think past the cost of my coffee cup coming from China, although this coffee cup is made in America. They just get upset about these tariffs. So I think you've got to throw the long ball. And so what Trump is going to do is there are laws in place. So let's take it from the top on tariffs. Yes, Congress has the authority to do taxes, excise taxes, and tariffs. It's crystal clear in the Constitution. It's Article 1. I think it's Section 8. And if you think about it, when we formed this country, it was only 3 years after the Boston Tea Party, no representation, no taxation without representation. So of course, when the framers wrote the Constitution, they were going to put the power to tax and spend with Congress, which was right. But Congress has delegated the authority to tariffs multiple times. They did it in 1969, they did it in 1974, they did it in 1977. So there's nothing new about Congress delegating the authority to the president for tariffs. And I think under the 77 Act, the IEEPA Act, they did that, and the Supreme Court got it wrong. But Trump still has the 74 Act. He still has the 69 Act to impose tariffs like he did in Trump 1. So he's going to put 15% tariffs on these imports, and they will allow to do that for 150 days. And then over the next 150 days, he's going to put more long-term tariffs in place like he did in Trump 1. Remember, Biden did not remove the tariffs from Trump 1. Everyone complained about it, but then he realized it saved our steel industry, Trump 1 tariffs.
I see. I know you're coming in here. I just want to make sure that I understand. So if I'm hearing you right, Mike, hearing you correctly, the main, or one of the main ideas behind these tariffs, Trump is trying to financially incentivize effectively made in America. So if we're importing things that are going to cost more, whereas you make it here, you won't have to pay that. Is that what I'm hearing effectively?
You add that with so the labor, we're never going to be able to beat the labor costs in some of these lower cost countries, although it's catching up. But when you add the transportation costs, when you add the other risks of logistics, if you add 15% to that cost of import, it then becomes financially, and I believe it becomes financially smart, especially with AI. Everyone is hating on AI, but if we can make things more efficiently where we can compete with the lower labor markets in Vietnam and China, then we can bring manufacturing back. And that is the middle class job that a lot of Americans want. Not everyone is good looking like you and RC. Some people, want to work with their hands. They want to, they just want to have a great job like my dad did and probably your dad did.
All right. Well, good looking RC. Take it away.
So, Mike, I want to stay on the economy. Interestingly enough, we've talked about it quite a bit on the show over the years. And Andrew, we did a segment last year asking a tough question, is the economy fake? And let me give you some context before I get to my question. We see numbers. Numbers come from the government. They're excluding this, including this. And it's like, well, if you included those things, you'd be at zero or upside down, which is why you don't include them. That said, we said, look, the real economic gauges that we see every day are when we go to the store or we talk with our friends and family. And Mike, the thing that continues to ring with me, under the guise that Trump is doing a lot of cleanup from people that came before him, there was a lot of kicking the can down the road. And what you proposed in your last answer is that he is actually actively working to fix the problem. My question is, do we have enough time left? Because the cost to live is now becoming unsustainable. The ability to buy a home, I think the median age now is 50 for a home buyer. Mike, is there enough time with Trump's tariff plan to actually get us over the finish line or get us stable? And if not, what is ultimately going to happen with the economy over the next few years?
RC, that is one of the best questions I've been asked on this issue, and I'm not sure I have a great answer. Obviously, Trump thinks that there is, but you're 100% right, and I don't see so much the time for America because, I think we've gotten prices stabilized. Let's talk about it, but I think the issue is there time before the midterms, or is there time before the next election? Because people vote with how they feel economically. It's like the old famous saying, it's the economy, stupid. It's true. And so here's where I'd like to think about inflation. Inflation, and we learned this back when we went to school, you still learn things. It wasn't all woke. But inflation happens for two reasons. One is it's either the supply-demand curve, meaning the demand is pulling too much, and that increases prices because there's less supply. Or the other reason why inflation goes up is because of the cost of raw materials. Clearly, after COVID, it was a demand pull inflation cycle. There was too much money in the economy. There was too much pull on products. Remember, everything was expensive. You couldn't, you're willing to pay any price because all that free money was coming from the government. Interest rates were still too low. And so inflation occurred because of the pull of consumer spending. Again, 70% of all of our economy is driven by consumer spending. Now, I think that has tapered off. I think the reason why we have inflation now, and again, 2% is still 2%. It's not like the prices have gone down this past year. It was still up 2%. It's because the cost of raw materials. And in my simple mind, the cost of raw materials can really be boiled down to two things in this economy that we live in: energy and interest rates. And that's it. Because everything else is a commodity and you can move things around. If steel goes up, you can fix it. If labor goes up, you can move it. Two things you cannot fix by moving it around, and that is interest and energy. And so this is why Trump doesn't, I don't think that Trump always explains things too well, but I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to drive down energy costs. And right now, oil is still around $65 a barrel. Gas has come down in most states, but it really needs to be around 55 or 60. I think that's the true break even for oil companies. So you get that down another 10%. And if we can get interest rates, right now the Fed fund rate is 3.75. When we get that down to 2.5 or 3, I think about 2.75 is the neutral rate. For every 1% that your home loan goes down, let's say you get a new home and you have a $300,000 home, which is about average in America. Every $300,000 mortgage that you have, if it goes down 1%, you save about $2,000. And that you can go to pay bills, you can buy more things. So if you can reduce energy costs and you can reduce interest rates, then the costs of things start to settle because businesses have to spend energy to make things. Businesses have to borrow money. Not everyone is Warren Buffett with billions of dollars. Most businesses take out loans. I know that because I'm a bank and I loan to businesses. And saving that interest rate is huge. So if Trump pulls us off in time, we're going to be great for a long-term country. But I do worry that the short-term cost could hurt the midterms, and it's going to take a really good communicator like Trump to stop that.
So, Mike, I appreciate that answer. And it actually dovetails into something else that's kind of been in my craw. And I'm asking you this because you have an outliers perspective with Old Glory Bank, and you guys have some exciting announcements coming up. I think fundamentally, you guys understand the roots of business and how to do things in the right way. One of the concerns with the stock market, and President Trump will point at it consistently and say, look, stock market's up, it's 50,000. But what we found, Mike, from our side in research is, in essence, what we have happening in the public markets is there are basically 7 technology businesses that are basically passing business back and forth to each other, I guess supposedly stimulating the economy. Mike, it feels like we are one bad issue, which, as we're doing the show, could potentially be a strike on Iran, from having an issue or having one of those legs cut out from under you. My question to you is, what do you see as an outsider who is doing things the right way when you look in and you hear a statement like that, and you've probably seen the same thing that we've seen? What's really going on here, Mike? What's happening with the markets? What's really happening with the economy at this point? What don't we know?
Okay, so that's great, and obviously I have no inside knowledge that anyone else does, and I'm just a normal person working. But we do have 80,000 customers that we serve, and so I get a feel for how they're doing, and we talk to them, and we have debit card spends, we have credit card spends, so we can see. So here's my view. I'm bullish on 2026, and I probably am an outlier, and here's why. One is the tariff issue does not worry me. We're going to get this figured out. I believe we've already seen investment in 2025. There was CapEx spending around 7.5%. That's a very good return. We've got a tax reduction coming to middle America. Again, as I said, 70% of the economy is driven by consumers. And what do consumers need to keep driving the economy? They need free cash flow. And how do you get free cash flow? By lowering energy costs, by lowering interest rates, and reducing your tax basis. Now, unfortunately, of that 70% driver, about 50% of it comes from the top 10% earners, but Trump is trying to close that gap. If we can get that 50% from 10% of the top earners to 12%, 13%, that other 10% is going to keep spending. And so it's just going to keep boosting the economy. So right now, folks, I am long and bullish on America and the economy. The fundamentals are good. Low unemployment, participation is low, but we've got to get people working again in that middle class. Energy prices are coming down, and they ain't going up under Trump. He's not going to allow it. We're saving all of this cost with bureaucracy and environmental BS. And that's going to make companies more efficient, which will then allow them to produce more and pay their labor. So I'm actually bullish. Maybe I'm an outlier. I am bullish on 2026. This tariff thing is a hiccup. It's just a distraction. Yes, could a prolonged war be a challenge and be a problem? You bet. But I can assure you, Donald Trump is not going to have a prolonged war in Iran. And it's just not his style. And he's going to release the military to do their thing. So I actually would have looked at certain assets. Like I thought Bitcoin was in a little bit of a bubble when it was at 120. I think gold is in a little bit of a bubble. I actually like silver. Remember, 50% of all silver is for industrial use. Only 50% is for, ornament and appreciation. I like silver. I think gold's in a little bit of a bubble. So, we're not here to give investment advice, but I say, obviously you should be investing in your future and have a broad-based approach. Look at different buckets. Have some buckets in precious metals. Have a little bucket in digital assets such as Bitcoin, ETH, whatever you like.